We are breaking into your usual programming here on WFAA this afternoon because the Department of Public Safety is expected to give an update on the mass shooting at the Allen Premium Outlets that we saw happen on Saturday. We know that a live news conference is set to begin here any moment at Allen City Hall. This is a live picture from that podium where DPS is going to be offering details. This is, by the way, the first time we will have heard from DPS officially on the record speaking to reporters since this happened Saturday afternoon, mid-afternoon, just after 3:30. It looks like somebody's speaking there at the podium. Let's go ahead and tune in here. This may be, I'm told to keep going here, it may be that this is just an update on exactly when this is going to begin, or perhaps a check of the microphones, and just to give everybody an idea that somebody is going to be taking that podium here in just the next couple of minutes. Anyway, back to my point here, DPS is leading this investigation now. We did hear briefly from officials, local officials at the scene on Saturday evening about what had happened in Allen, what their investigation had revealed at that point, just hours into the investigation. A lot of preliminary information in that one. And since then, we have been limited to news releases, press releases, and of course, our different reporters here have been working a vast network of sources to uncover as much information as possible. And we've gotten quite a bit of it about the victims in this case, about the shooter in this case. But again, officially, we just haven't heard much word. We also can say that that Saturday evening briefing that we got, they didn't take questions from reporters. It'll be interesting to see how many questions they might be willing to take today and how many of those they are able to answer. I will say that since we have been finding information through sources and confirming that information through sources over the past several days, that has typically been followed by law enforcement confirming what we have already been able to confirm through our different sources. And so again, this will give us a nice opportunity as we are now several days into this investigation to 8 people being shot and killed at the Allen Premium Outlets on Saturday, multiple people still hospitalized. Again, this will be the first time that we're able to really get a window into what investigators have been able to develop in these past several days. We know that the shooter in this case is a 33-year-old man. He was killed there at the scene, you'll remember, by a police officer who happened to be responding to a different call there at that shopping mall in Allen. And of course, you know, we have to wonder how much worse this could have and would have been had that officer not heard those shots being fired and run toward those shots and take out that shooter Saturday afternoon. You're looking at the memorial there in the video that has popped up there at the Allen Premium Outlets. People have been going to that memorial for days now. That memorial has just been growing as the community here in North Texas continues to mourn. Sadly, we have gotten accustomed to these events all over the country, but home backyard. I want to bring in Tanya Iser, investigative reporter here at WFAA as we await this news conference at Allen City Hall from DPS. You know firsthand what this has been like. I've been, talking about how we've been trying to develop information. I think people have such a thirst, and rightfully so, for information, about safety and about what happened there and how this could have happened. We just haven't gotten a lot of that information officially. And I know that you've especially been working your sources trying to get people information that they need to know.
That's right. We have been, myself and Rebecca Lopez and the other members of our investigative team, we have been working this very hard. And over the past couple of days, we've obtained the search warrant affidavit and also the return. In that search warrant affidavit, we learned that he was staying in this extended stay motel. We also learned what they seized inside that motel. There was ammo, there were handcuffs, there was all kinds of receipts for rifles and other gear that he had bought. I mean, it was very clear.
And a lot of us keep, I'm sorry to cut you off there, a lot of us keep wondering why. We always wonder the why after something like this, as though there's any explanation for doing something like this. But among the things that you found when you got that information about what was in that motel room is that there were handwritten notes. We don't know what they say or if they pertain to, potential motive here, but it certainly piques the interest.
It does. There were the search warrant inventory lists that there were 6 handwritten notes seized from that motel room. And I also want to note that when you mention the police officer, there are untold lives that were saved here by his actions, because inside that car there were more rifles and ammo, and he was heavily armed, just what he had on his body. So the toll, I mean, while it's horrible what happened, the toll could have been so much greater.
Okay. I think that they are ready to go there at Allen City Hall. It looks like all the members there filing in. DPS expected to give us the first update that we have heard from them since this happened Saturday afternoon. Let's listen in.
Hello and thank you. My name is Oscar Villarreal. I'm a lieutenant with the Texas Department of Public Safety. As we begin today, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. First will be Chief Brian Harvey with the Allen Police Department. Then we will have Special Agent in charge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Chad Yarbrough. And then summarizing things at the end will be our Regional Director, Hank Sibley with the Texas Department of Public Safety, before we begin our Spanish translation.
Thank you. Well, when this community was attacked on May 6th, the Allen Police Department responded along with many others from the North Texas law enforcement community. That included both police and fire. Our community also responded with an overwhelming show of support for the victims' families, and public safety, and we are grateful and thank you. One particular officer distinguished himself in an exemplary manner, demonstrating tremendous bravery when he immediately addressed an attacker that was injuring and murdering innocent victims. We know our community would like to thank and honor him. However, we're not prepared to release that officer's name due to the ongoing investigation. And the officer has also expressed his appreciation for his privacy as he continues to process this tragic event. There were many other heroic, life-saving efforts conducted by our officers and the fire department. We plan to recognize them in the future, and we also must acknowledge the bravery of Allied security guard Christian LaCour, who evacuated one individual to safety and was shot while courageously remaining to help others. The immediate support of multiple local, county, state, and federal agencies is so numerous, it will be challenging to thank each one individually. Each one of them was critical to the safe evacuation of the site and stabilization efforts. Thanks to the swift assistance of all these agencies, we have now officially concluded the actions at the Allen Premium Outlets and turned the site back over to property management. The reopening of the stores at the outlets will be determined by management and store owners. We know our Allen community and many, many others are feeling the deep weight of grief from this tragedy, and we are heartbroken over the 8 victims that were lost, the others who were wounded, and the hundreds of people who experienced this traumatic event firsthand. Members of our department and victim services units from the FBI, the Department of Public Safety, and the Collin County District Attorney's Office will continue to work closely with members of our community who are requesting victims and/or mental health services. In the coming days, members of the police department will continue to work closely with the FBI, DPS, and Texas Rangers to thoroughly investigate this tragedy. We have relied heavily on the agencies here today, the Department of Public Safety, the Texas Rangers, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My request to you today, as the media, is to continue to help publicize our Victim Counseling and Family Assistance Fund. Those 2 opportunities that can make a tremendous difference in these individuals' lives, and it is listed on the Allen City website. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the FBI Special Agent in Charge, Chad Yarbrough. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chad Yarbrough. I'm the Special Agent in charge of the Dallas FBI Field Office. First and foremost, on behalf of the FBI, I want to begin by expressing my deepest condolences to the victims, to the families and loved ones of those murdered and injured in this vicious attack this past Saturday at the Allen Premium Outlets. We recognize the fear and heartache that occurs when heinous acts of violence are committed, and the devastating impact it has on the people and the community. Since our arrival to the scene on Saturday, the FBI has devoted significant resources to assist in the investigation of what occurred in Allen. Those resources include investigative personnel, intelligence, digital forensics, and victim services, just to name a few. The FBI is currently analyzing electronic devices and digital media connected to the suspect at our North Texas Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory. There's still a lot to be done in this investigation, and we will continue to thoroughly review this material and share with the investigative team. The FBI's Victim Services Response Team has been deployed with over 20 specially trained personnel to work and collaborate alongside the Allen Police Department, the Texas Department of Public Safety's Victim Services, and the Collin County District Attorney's Office, as well as other state and community organizations, to provide essential support and assistance to those impacted by this unimaginable tragedy. Strong, well-established relationships with our law enforcement partners and community members have been indispensable to this response and investigation, and we cannot thank our partners enough for their steadfast commitment and unyielding efforts to help others. As of yesterday, the Victim Services Team and community partners have been able to provide resources and services to over 30 families, which consists to over 100 individuals. And over the past 2 days, FBI personnel and community partners have escorted close to 1,100 people to retrieve their abandoned vehicles in the parking lots in the vicinity of the shooting. If you were present on Saturday at the Allen Premium Outlets, we encourage you to visit the Family Assistance Center at the Allen Senior Recreational Center at 451 St. Mary Drive here in Allen. In addition, personal effects that were left outside the retail stores have been collected and can also be retrieved at this location. It will be open today and tomorrow from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. Victims are not just those who are physically injured, but also those who were present and may be experiencing emotional distress. We ask that you continue to respect the privacy of the victims affected by this tragedy. We are aware of multiple fake online fundraisers that are currently underway for the victims. Please properly vet any charity or fundraiser before donating money to ensure that it reaches the proper victims. And there's a list of those properly vetted charities on the Allen website. We are also still seeking information from the public. If you are at the Allen Premium Outlets and have information, we ask that you please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Our focus in the coming days will continue to be providing aid and comfort to our victims, as well as working with our law enforcement partners on the criminal investigation that is ongoing. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with all those who have been so severely impacted by this terrible tragedy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Hank Sibley. I am the North Texas Regional Director for the Texas Department of Public Safety. First, I'd like to express the condolences on the part of the state of Texas and the men and women of the Texas Department of Public Safety for the loss of the victims that died in that horrific crime that occurred at the Allen Outlet Mall on Saturday. We cannot begin to fathom the pain and the time it will take to recover from this, but our prayers are with you. I would also like to commend the response on Saturday. The response to the mall shooting was stellar. We are so blessed that an Allen police officer who took the appropriate action did what he did when he did it. He undoubtedly saved countless lives. If he hadn't been there, I think we'd had a much more severe situation. On top of that, the agencies that responded, the local agencies, sheriff's office, other PDs, the fire department, everybody did what they were supposed to do and responded to the scene. From the DPS perspective, we had Texas Highway Patrol troopers on the scene within minutes. We dispatched our Texas Rangers to assist with the shooting investigation, and ultimately the Rangers have taken over the lead in the investigation. In addition, we had our SRT teams, aircraft, and now to this point we have our victim services counselors on the ground. I will tell you that Governor Abbott, through my director, Steve McCraw, reached out immediately and said, whatever needs to be done to support the city of Allen in this horrific time to do it. All state resources have been committed to this effort. The Texas Rangers have been tasked and been put in lead in this investigation. It's a very large crime scene, very complex investigation spanning multiple jurisdictions. And the Rangers, along with the local law enforcement agency, Allen PD, and our federal partners, particularly FBI and ATF, are working hand in hand to get the answers. You know, many of the answers are still away from getting to, but some things we do know. We have processed the crime scene. As the chief was saying, and the SAC was saying, we've released the parking lot, 1,100 vehicles. I mean, it was a big scene. We had to clear it. We've done it in pretty record time. If you think about it, you're only talking less than 72 hours ago this event was occurring. And to be this far down the road, I think, is very commendable on the part of all the parties involved. The cooperation between the agencies has been exceptional, and I think it's a model for the way things should be done in the future. One thing that we do know is after we've identified the shooter, and his name has been made public, he's from the Dallas area, so the FBI, Dallas PD assisted. We ran warrants down on his residence, his actual parents' house, and I believe hotel residence, to see what evidence we could glean from that. The FBI has his computers, cell phones, and other evidence, and they're in the process of trying to do digital forensics, as the SAC mentioned, to go ahead and ascertain what type of evidence we can get off of that. The shooter had no CCH, no criminal history, so we had no documentable criminal history on him. He was in the U.S. Army, and that's been posted on the media, in 2008. He was in basic training. I think early on in basic training they realized, from what I've seen, that he was not a fit for the Army, and so they separated him from the Army, before he got out of the training mode. There were some questions, about his fitness for duty. That information will be forthcoming later on as we dig into the investigation. He also had a private security license in the state of Texas. Again, he had no criminal history, and the license has expired. I understand he worked as a security guard for several firms, but he was not an active security guard at the time of this. He had 8 weapons with him. He had 3 on his person, and he had 5 in his vehicle. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has run traces on all the weapons. All of the weapons were legally obtained by the shooter. None of them were stolen, anything else. And now we're running checks on them to see if they were used in any crimes. But at this time, we haven't uncovered anything in that regard. The big question that we're dealing with right now is, what's his motive? Why did he do this? Well, the big question is, we don't know. That's what the investigation is trying to find out. We do know that he had neo-Nazi ideation. He had patches, he had tattoos, even his signature, verified that. That's one thing we do know. We are trying to get into his computer and on social media and find out, whether he had anything that he'd publicized or been out. We're looking around, we're seeing trying to find what we looked at, and trying to get every information we can. This is the ongoing part of the investigation, and we have a situation that once we figure that out, hopefully we figure that out and get definitive about it, we can go public with that down the road. To me, it looks like he targeted the location rather than a specific group of people. He was very random in the people he killed. It didn't matter the age, seemed race or sex. He just shot people, which is horrific in itself. As I said before, the investigation is ongoing. The Texas Rangers, FBI, ATF, and Allen PD, as well as any other agencies assisting us, are going to leave no stone unturned to try to identify this motive and try to find out whatever we can. At this time, we think he acted alone. There's no indication he had any Confederates or anybody working with him, but we're also keeping an open mind in that regard too, because you never know. As the FBI SAC mentioned, our victim services, the state of Texas Victim Services, working hand in hand with the city of Allen and the FBI to try to assist these victims to get on the road to getting their lives back to normal. So we're doing what we can, and the information that you need to contact is there. There's also, the state of Texas has a crimes victim compensation fund, and we're also trying to plug the victims into that to help them get their lives right. Okay, with that, that's all I'm going to brief on right now. Again, the investigation is ongoing, but I will take a couple of questions.
Would you consider this an act of domestic terrorism, considering his racist ideology?
Well, It's too early to say that for sure. You know, I mean, obviously, circumstantially, you might say something like that, but we need to get more into his ideology, get into his social media, and see more than we have.
Can you confirm that there is a website out there that he has posted the pictures of him with the swastika tattoo and some of his notes and his ideology?
I know there's a website out there. I haven't personally seen it. I know the FBI and the Texas Rangers are looking into that, and that's another part of the investigation we're looking at.
Director, can I ask if at this point there's been any kind of manifesto or anything like that that you have found in his belongings?
Not to my knowledge.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We understand that he worked some private security gigs before. Did he ever work at the Allen Premium Outlets?
Not to my knowledge. I don't have the name of the companies he worked for, and I don't know if he worked at that location. He hasn't worked in the security business for a while.
But we don't know. You know for sure he did not work
I do
there?
not know 100% where he worked.
Yes, sir.
Have you been able to build a timeline of how long the event lasted, and whether or not all of the victims were indeed shot by this suspect?
So I believe the event was like 3 to 4 minutes from the time that the first shots were fired. I think it was 3:37 or something like that. And we're looking at, I think within 3 or 4 minutes, the Allen PD officer had neutralized the suspect and the shooting stopped. And there's no indication anybody else was shooting besides him and the officer.
Given what he was posting on social media, was he on law enforcement's radar at all?
Not to my knowledge.
Last question, and we'll defer to that man right there.
Matt Coughlin with ABC News. I think I'm probably echoing the public here. Is there any way that you think you can protect the public from the next mass shooting if anyone, a suspect like this man, who we know is discharged from the military over mental health concerns, can go out and purchase an armload of firearms?
Well, that's a very difficult question. And he was in the military in 2008, and reporting requirements were a lot different back then than they are now. And even if he couldn't have purchased these firearms legally, he probably could have obtained them illegally or used some other vehicle, literally a vehicle, to perpetrate something similar. You know, it's when you have people with mental illness, if it turns out that this gentleman has that, when you have that situation, they will find a way. So,
Make your job harder?
Sometimes, yes.
Sir, are you saying that he could not have gone into a licensed dealer and purchased a weapon?
No.
He had to buy it?
No, he legally, every weapon he purchased was legal. So,
You could do that. You could do that from. You could purchase that. You could
Thank
purchase a weapon from somebody privately.
All right,
But
so
could you-
moving into the next phase of our brief here, Sergeant Tony De La Cerda will step forward and translate what you just heard into Spanish. So give us just a second, and he will begin.
Buenas tardes, soy el sargento de la Cerda.
All right, you've been listening to a news conference being held at Allen City Hall this afternoon, updating us on the investigation into the mass shooting at the Allen Premium Outlets on Saturday. Those speaking including a representative from the Department of Public Safety here in Texas, as well as the Allen Police Department. We heard from the chief there, and we also heard from the FBI, the special agent in charge. Jason Wheeler here again with investigative reporter Tanya Iser. A few things that stood out to me there, Tanya, is, finally we're starting to at least fill in some of the blanks because we hadn't been, hearing from investigators for days now. A lot confirmed, though, that we have already been able to find through sources. But some interesting tidbits in here. This, I think, is the first we've heard that there were 8 weapons on this shooter, 3 on his body, 5 of them still in his vehicle. We had just talked about this before we went to this news conference as to how much worse this could have been if it hadn't been for that police officer who happened to be at those premium outlets that day for a separate call and heard those shots being fired and approached that gunman and took him out.
Oh, absolutely, Jason. This could have been far worse, and knowing how much ammo he had on him and in that car. And also, you heard Hank Sibley, the DPS director, saying that, he said, why did he do this? Well, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They're still trying to determine that motive, although, they're confirming that he did have these neo-Nazi ideations, that he had the tattoos, that he had patches along that line. And, he was also asked by my colleague Rebecca Lopez about this site. It's an obscure site. It appears to be overseas where although law enforcement has not confirmed that it was him, there's a tremendous amount of postings and other things that would make you think that this is him. And we also, you also heard, the chief there in Allen talk about the police officer and his actions and the heroism, and they're not going to name him yet because he's asking for privacy. You can just imagine how he's feeling right now, but I think you cannot laud him enough for the actions that he took that day. And then we're also learning that they've released that parking lot. They have they've let people get in and get 1,100 cars. I mean, you just imagine the massive crime scene that was there.
There are so many moving parts in this. And before we go to Rebecca here, I just want to say part of the reason that they want to keep that officer's information private at this time, the officer who was able to take out this gunman on Saturday afternoon, was they said he too is still processing what happened. You can only imagine. I mean, these people who are on these police forces, they're there to try to protect, and he did protect, but surely he sees, all of those who couldn't be protected, as this unfolded, and there are people on the ground and so forth. It's a lot to process, not only for that officer, but for everyone else who was there, who survived. And we heard a lot about victims assistance. Sadly, in this country, we've gotten really good at putting teams in place to drop into these communities where these things happen and offer that assistance. So if you need that assistance, it is available. The Allen City website, again, is a good spot to check for those different assistance programs. We want to bring in senior crime and justice reporter Rebecca Lopez, who is live at that news conference. Rebecca, you have been covering this since Saturday afternoon when it went down. We heard your first question there to the DPS representative right after he wrapped up his remarks. At this point, they're not ready to say that this was domestic terrorism, but they did acknowledge this website that is associated with this shooter and saying that that is its own investigation at this point.
Yeah, clearly the FBI has a lot of work ahead of them because it takes a long time to go through all of those cell phones and computers and social media websites to figure out exactly what his motive was. That was our number one question. What was his motive? And he apparently says that, or the DPS says that basically they do not think that they have a motive yet and that he was randomly targeting people. But if you do look at the victims, they were all people of color. And so when you look at what we've seen on his website, it does beg the question, did he specifically target people of color? I don't know that they're ready to actually say that, but when you look at his rhetoric on those websites and when you hear what he had to say about minorities, it does make you wonder if in fact this was targeted towards minorities, even though DPS did not confirm that. But I did ask him, was this an act of domestic terrorism? And they were not ready to go that far, but did acknowledge that he had white supremacist and racist ideology.
Was that they were talking about how they've seized a lot of electronics that they're going to be going through, as well as his social media accounts, just to see if there's a pattern in there, but also to see if there was at any point any acknowledgement of what he was going to do. I think they said they were going to check to see if he publicized any of this. A couple of things that also stood out: no criminal history. Interesting. They think that he acted alone. They're not closing the door on that, but they think he acted alone. And 8 weapons, all legally purchased, they say. One final thing before we get to Jason Whiteley here. This issue about him being in basic training, being let go from the Army because he was unfit. I thought it was interesting that they said that there would be more info coming out about that as we go forward. So clearly there's some more information there that is yet to be fully hashed out. Let's get to Jason Whiteley now, our senior political reporter here at WFAA, because this does also have political ramifications, Jason. Just yesterday, we saw this sort of surprise, I think, there in the Texas legislature with a couple of Republicans joining Democrats on a bill to raise the age. It's been called the Raise the Age bill for certain semi-automatic gun purchases from 18 to 21. It's gotten out of committee. It still has a long way to go there in the legislature, but I don't think anybody saw that one coming even early yesterday afternoon before it did.
Jason, no doubt, indeed, there's almost a seismic shift that's kind of happening here. We saw a number of lawmakers besides Justin Holland, who's from Rockwall, and parts of Collin County as well, too, what he represents in the State House. We've seen several Republicans now saying maybe it's time to start talking about some of this. And again, you know, the law enforcement stands up there and they're talking about reporters and what they want to share with reporters. The community is waiting on answers. They talked about how many people Victim Services from the FBI is helping out, 30 families, 100 individuals. Lawmakers in Austin are waiting on answers. The answers will come slowly. You can't rush these things, but the suspect is dead in this case. Investigators are trying to piece together exactly what led up to this because he did not have a record, as you said. I do want to share something else that Teresa Woodard, one of our colleagues, is working on right now for our later newscast today. She is in Austin. She is at the state capitol, and she spoke now with a third Republican who represents Collin County in the state legislature. He went on the record. His name is Frederick Frazier. He is also a member or former member. I haven't talked to Frederick in a while, but he was with the Dallas Police Department SWAT team. He was a city council in Collin County, and now he's at the state legislature. Teresa Woodard asked him in the hallway, is it time to start talking about guns? This is what he told Teresa Woodard just after lunch today, a couple of hours ago. He said, are we making it too easy for them to get these weapons? This is Frederick Frazier, Republican from Collin County. Why is it, he said, that the particular weapon, the weapon of choice every time, referring to the AR-15, he says that's something we have to take a hard look at, and that hard look needs to come from the Second Amendment grassroots folks. It has to come from the NRA, Frazier said. That sit down has to happen. How do we fix it, or is there a fix? Frederick Frazier said, I think there is. I think there's somewhere in the middle there. Jason, we haven't heard Republicans talk about this. Remember, this state has gone through Santa Fe, El Paso, Midland, Odessa, Sutherland Springs, Uvalde, and now in Allen. To see some political winds changing here is fascinating. The last thing I'll tell you that I think that we should be watching is as this investigation kind of comes full circle and investigators release more information, what will Governor Abbott, what will the state legislature do with that? Will Governor Abbott wait 2 years for the legislature to come back into session to consider any possible changes? Or is that something that the Governor Abbott might consider doing earlier and calling a special session? No timeline on any investigation, but certainly something to watch if you have Republicans in Texas right now. These are conservative Republicans, not ones in the middle. Conservative Republicans saying it's time to start talking about this, Jason. Something to definitely keep an eye on.
And Jason, this is only several Republicans that we're talking about, but the significance of this, just in light of the fact that you ticked off all of these different mass shootings that have occurred here in recent years in Texas. And during that time, we have actually seen the legislature loosen gun restrictions, not tighten them here in this state. So, you know, with that as the backdrop, it gives you a real idea of the significance of what we're talking about here just in the last 24 hours.
Think about what happened 2 years ago in the 2021 session. The last time lawmakers met in Austin, they finally passed open carry, and that means that anyone can now carry a firearm. They don't have to have a concealed handgun license, a CHL in the state, and they don't have to go through any type of training for that firearm. Law enforcement officers, law enforcement leaders across the state, chiefs of police, Houston, Dallas, all over the place, they were upset about this. They went down to lobby lawmakers saying, don't do this. The legislature still passed that. As you mentioned, they have loosened gun laws in the past 5 or 6 years since these mass shootings have happened, 6 of them over the past 5.5 years. And they have also added money to mental health care, but mental health care looks like it's taking a back burner right now to weapons, and that is a seismic shift, I think. We're starting to see the cracks in the surface with Republicans right now.
Jason Whiteley, senior political reporter. This sounds like an upcoming episode of our Politics political podcast for sure. Really appreciate you weighing in with us this afternoon. As we wrap our coverage here again, we just heard a news conference at Allen City Hall on the Premium Outlets shooting that happened on Saturday that took the lives of 8 innocent people, ages 3 to 37. It all unfolded, they say, in a matter of 3 to 4 minutes. The carnage that was done there was just extraordinary, just in that short short period of time. DPS asked just a little while ago, can you protect the citizens of Texas from this happening again? The DPS spokesperson saying that is a difficult question. Again, there are resources. There are fake online fundraisers out there for some of these victims. They're asking if you're going to contribute, to do it to known sources that are verified, and we have those on our website. Allen, the city of Allen has that as well. Also want to pass along the FBI asking if you were there that day, you may have seen something, you may know some piece of information, to call them 800-CALL-FBI. They do plan to recognize the first responders at some point when this has all been wrapped up. They did an extraordinary job out there on Saturday afternoon. And finally, the scene, they say, has been turned back over to the Allen Premium Outlets. It will now be up to the shopping mall and the individual stores as to when they reopen again. Thank you so much to senior crime and justice reporter Rebecca Lopez, our senior political reporter Jason Whiteley, and of course investigative reporter Tanya Iser for all your contributions today. Thank you for being with us for this breaking news here. We will see you back here in just about an hour and a half for the 4 o'clock news. In the meantime, let's get you back to regular programming now.